warm welcome, dear listeners, to New Generation Women, and I'm Janine Fanzenos. So now I jump off the cliff. That is where we ended in our last interview 2 weeks ago. And when I say we, I mean Jared Franks, director of the Lila Foundation in Sydney. And for those who have not listened to our first interview, Jared is a psychotherapist, public speaker, and guiding mentor to people who have a strong desire to wake up from suffering, from exhaustion, from not enoughness, or running on empty. So let's continue where we ended last time when I bravely said, great, now I jump off the cliff and face the truth. And you were saying you're not preparing. And I said I prepared and see where we get. So hello and warm welcome. Good morning from Munich to Sydney. Hello, Jared.
Hi, Janine. Thank you for having me.
So we spontaneously decided to have a second part, which is awesome. And we ended that I said, okay, Jared, after my brain works slowly and it's about getting the brain out of the way anyway. And I said, so what you're saying in the last interview is the truth is the passion, the truth is doing the work, because I do think that we're in a time where people are so easily burn out in quotes and we are exhausted. We do not know how to do it better, but we feel there must be a different way. And many people are trying to do it better, but then we do more work. And you also said to me, it's not about doing, Janine, it's about undoing. And then I asked you, but isn't the undoing the work actually? And let's talk about the truth and explore the truth a little bit more today. How would you define the truth? How does truth feel? What is truth?
Look, it's a great question because I think that word truth has also been misused and it's been used to rationalize my truth and that I somehow own the truth and that my truth is more true than your truth. But it's not about words. It's not about a doctrine. It's not about an idea or a belief. When I refer to truth, I'm referring to what cannot be believed, what cannot change, what's always here, what is before a thought and after a thought. And so to me, that actually means that all thoughts are only subjectively true, not objectively true. So that there is no truth in thought. Thoughts can maybe point to the truth. They can point to what's beyond the dualistic black and white, good and bad mind, but the truth cannot be held in a thought.
And that makes it, you don't want to think because, and I learned from Jared Franks that thinking or my way of thinking is not the truth. So I think, yes, don't think when you're talking about the truth. But then my mind is trying to think to grasp it. So how do you receive the truth? I do not try to think because the thinking comes from a little me. It's very subjective. People who know the Enneagram, there are a lot different fixations, 9 to say, that talk about there are 9 ways of how you keep yourself from the truth, from the essence. And it's very different. Not to go too deep into that would, stretch it too much. But I do understand in my thinking, I don't get further. How do I get to the truth? How do I touch the truth?
Well, I love your question again. I think firstly, just to say that thinking is not the enemy, that it's just simply if you want the absolute truth, then you have to be willing to look somewhere else. And so in answer to your question, I would say just for one moment to actually stop and to look and see what is here when I am not thinking and what is here that's actually here when I am thinking and here when I stop thinking. And so thoughts arise and fall. They come and they go. And when I speak about truth, what I'm really referring to is what is here when thoughts before thoughts come, when thoughts are here, and when thoughts disappear. What is really true? And so, and
Mm.
really, actually, what it's pointing to is really the truth of who we are. That all my work is really pointing to the fact that most humans on this planet are operating through what you called little me, which is really this mind created sense of self. It's this idea of who I am. We wake up in the morning and we start telling this story. We have to remember what happened yesterday. We have to remember what who we are and what our roles are and what our job is and what our relationships are. And we retell this story about who we are every day. And what I discovered was that my suffering was linked very much directly to this thought about who I am, that all my suffering was about me. And that for a moment, when I was willing to stop right in the middle and just for one moment not tell the story of me and then find out what's here that has no story, I discovered a me that is here that has no story, something that transcends the story. And so that's maybe more accurate about what I mean when I talk about the truth.
Let's dive in because I made a few notes and my notes are now like, oh, I have to ask here again or here again. And now my notes, I'm lost in my notes without control into nothingness again. So I'm always very challenged in my interviews with you, like it has no structure. Um, okay. Just for the listeners, if you hear Jared sometimes not as clearly, please be patient with us. I try to keep up the line because I can see that the internet line is not as good, but Jared is in Sydney. So let's keep up the line and try to continue. And let's be challenged with this. Maybe this gives us kind of a break when we can hear Jared, Jared that we
Yes.
go into this one moment of letting all the stories go. The anger of the technique might not be as good, so we let that go too. Um, and I'm very intrigued because there is this moment of calmness, this moment, and you said it so beautifully in the first interview. You were with the silence. You didn't do anything. You didn't teach. You didn't try to teach. You didn't go into a concept. How can I stand out in the world and make myself be seen to be this great guru or teacher? And that's very, very, that gives you a good breath of, gosh, finally, Um, when we let's have two examples. There are two things that really strike me. One is causeless happiness, and the other one is not doing. In a world where we've tried to find happiness always in the outside, even if we understand that this is not, the wife, the house, the kids, the career, the cars is not making us happy. So we do get a sense of that, but we don't see how it looks different. So then you say, while we are striving and looking for, kids and marriage, and you say, pause, because you're always into this enoughness. You're never into this moment is all I have and all I need.
Well, I
Is
don't.
that right?
I don't say pass. What I say is that I don't look for fulfillment from an object that comes and goes, and so I don't look outside of myself for fulfillment. And then from this place of fulfillment, there's an outpouring of love, and there's an outpouring of happiness, and there's a drive for social contact. There's still a human animal here that wants to relate, and so I do. I have a girlfriend, and I am really enjoying my relationship very much, and I also work and I also earn money and I also am doing this interview with you. And that's because, but it's flowing out of a natural sense of being happy and at peace and fulfilled. And that's actually why you're interviewing me, not because I'm needy for some kind of uh, something outside of myself, because you wouldn't interview me then. So that,
Well, maybe I would if you would be, performing very well and I would fall into it. So there are some people, it's not that there are people out there on the market. It's really good that you say that the whole manifestation and I create the life I want wave is extremely strong. and it started to become more popular. So The Secret, and now many people are jumping on that and selling in all kinds of different forms. And maybe we do need to have those steps, but it's always about creating what you want. And I remember that you said, and I'm finished in a second. I remember that you said you don't get everything you want. It's not about your wanting. Is that right?
Yes, I mean, well, I know for myself that that there was a lot of things that I wanted, and luckily for me, I didn't get it. And you could say that there are 10,000 desires in a human mind, particularly in the Western world. And there with someone who's in the developing world, their desire is food and to stay away from the bombs and to survive, and so their desires are very limited. But somehow us in the Western world, where we have the medicine, we have the safety and the security, and we have the job opportunities, and we are the ones with infinite desires, it seems.
Yes, yeah, I know what you mean. I just figured out now I'm a very disciplined, go-getting personality, and my journey was about surrendering, accepting, receiving patience. So was a really tough journey for me. So if somebody tells me in order to get what you want, and it can be meaningful, it can be joyful, purposeful. It doesn't have to be something more superficial. It can still be connected to something that we define as better than the surface. If you would say me jog to Alaska, I would jog to Alaska. I just have the discipline. Not that it's not easy; it would be very hard, but I would do it. But in trying to get what I want, it didn't work out. I didn't receive what I wanted. I got so exhausted in the doing, and working on myself and the inner journey. I mean, the inner journey can be very exhausting also. And I felt like almost flat on my nose and said, I'm so done with wanting. I don't want anything more. I just don't, then I want causelessness, happiness. I want
Yes.
that. So, and not so many people are there in this. I don't want to say giving up, but maybe it's a giving up first until you can surrender. There was a really big exhaustion of, I'm so done. I just want to find out what is enough, what is right now. And still, when you say, okay, have a moment of pause, and there is a truth, and there is this liveliness beyond all your thoughts and beyond all your wanting. And I think that makes me and some people I know very afraid. Then there is nothing. Then there is emptiness. Then I'm dead. Then nothing happens. I'm sitting there in my apartment, and then what? And I'm very bored then with life. I'm just sitting there. And that's one thought that came up. And the other was like, yeah, I easily could do it. I'm done with having to identify myself as a career. I can see that I'm still lovable, even if I don't make a career. But I do make, we are in a material world, so I do need to have some paychecks. So what then? These were all the thoughts that came up in me, and I'm sure in other people.
Yeah, it's very natural. And I think most of us are driven by a fear of not enough. And I before I met my teacher, I also read The Secret and watched the movie, and I even followed it up to find out where did it come from, and discovered this Esther Hicks who does channeling. And if you really
Yes,
listen closely to everything she's saying, she's basically saying if you want something, you have to pretend in yourself that you already have it. And what that means is that the vibration in your body mind is one of total fulfillment, not one of neediness, not one of lack. That if you feel lack in your body, if you feel lack in your heart, if you feel like you don't have enough, then that's what you vibrate out to the universe, and that's what the universe interprets and gives you. Whereas if you feel totally fulfilled, then the universe will give you everything that you need, based on your already feeling fulfilled. That's actually what The Secret is about. It got misinterpreted to
yes,
thinking, vision boards, and really there was just a wave of people desperate to get what they want. and when really it should have been a wave of people feeling completely and totally fulfilled. so, so really,
No, yeah, that's completely true.
and then to see, like, whatever it is you want in your life, when you approach that thing, let's say it's a certain kind of job, when you approach it, what is your relationship to yourself and to life in that moment? Are you feeling open and fulfilled and happy? Is there a yes? Is there love pouring out of you, and calmness and intelligence? Or is there this lack of fulfillment, neediness, and reflection on the past, that I never got it before, and so maybe I'll never get it again? So this is really what I'm talking about. I'm not saying give up what you want. If you love gardening, garden to your heart's content. If you love being on the radio, go on the radio. It's really not that. What I'm talking about is, where do you find the deepest fulfillment? And actually, are you willing to give up the neediness? Are you willing to give up this sense that what I need is not here, and that what I want is not here? Because what I found was that in the willingness to give up neediness, I was thrown into myself, and I discovered a kind of, like, a depth, an absolute depth to this moment, a depth to myself, a mystery. And I've discovered love, and intelligence. And so that's that that's what I discovered. It's not a discover of pure boring emptiness, and now I lock myself in my house and don't do anything. It's actually giving up the future, which is thinking, giving up the past, which is more thinking, and becoming deeply connected to the present moment, which is all there is. And then to feel the fullness of your own self in this moment, you then radiate that out to the world, and then go and do what you love.
Okay. No, no, no. Yeah, that sounds so. It's simple. It is simple, and so from where I'm standing, it needs practice or remembering. And I know that when Dr. Joe Dispenza said kind of the same. He teaches people to feel so whole, but he does his methods, and they do take a lot of work from his point of view. There are many ways to Rome, I say. But I remember, and now I'm coming to the essence. He said, until you feel so whole that you don't need it anymore. So there is a common essence. And now I do under what I get is you stop your feeling. It's not the willpower. It's about the willingness to let go of. It's about the willingness to let go of a neediness, or in any way neediness to become famous, neediness of being loved, and sinking into something that is already there. Um, talk about the example of people who are sick. I mean, we're always having a driver, sickness or love hurt or heartbreak or not having the job we want. So that makes us, wanting to look at stuff and don't be asleep and continue life. When people are sick, and sometimes sickness can be really intense, whatever that is, and even if it's a life-threatening sickness, there is in my mind right now, I find it a real challenge to say in this moment, in this sickness, and I do know that people have found that and have beautifully said, I'm at the moment, I'm very sick, and I'm very fulfilled. I feel a deep fulfillment in myself. And I also heard that people would die and they didn't survive. And, that is, I think, so hard for us to accept that you have that deep grace, but that might not mean that you are going to be healthy. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I
I mean,
mean,
I'm diving deep right now. Yes.
yes. There's the body is not this kind of reflection on your purity. Ramana
Mm.
Maharshi said the body is full of blood and pus and guts. If you really look at it, and it's designed in its design is a kind of expiry date, and it gets sick, and it's also, there's a certain randomness, or there are genetic predispositions, and people who die at very young ages, And we again we take this personally, we take this to mean something about me, because at the primary root of all ego is the belief I am this body. So I look at this
Mm,
body and this is me. And that's
mm,
actually the beginning of the egoic trance, is I am this body. And so then sickness becomes a major part of the trance. And if I'm healthy and if I'm strong and my body's healthy and my body's strong, that means I'm good and I'm loved and I'm going to live forever. And if my body is sick and if my body has got something wrong with it, that means maybe I did something wrong, or why does God not love me, or it's not fair.
mm,
And
mm.
so what I discovered in the surrendering, and I talk to people every day who have body issues, and really I always ask them the same thing. I say, in this very moment right now, is there anything you can do? And generally they say no. And I say,
Mhm.
well, in this moment, then, can you just simply accept your body as it is right now and end the war and end the judgment and simply let it be exactly as it is? And when they're willing to do that, what comes over them is a deep relaxation. And in the deep relaxation, they always report something favorable about the body. Now, if they have a very real sickness, then it won't cure the sickness necessarily, but it will stop any overlay of suffering and resistance that goes with the sickness. And
Mm.
for many people, actually, their body issues are actually directly related to the degree of anxiety and depression and self-hatred and anger that they feel in their body and in their lives. And so when they are willing to actually surrender, when they are willing to let everything really be exactly as it is in this moment, then there is usually a profound effect on the body itself. So
But that means, yeah, no, no, I understand that. We are still having some technical unevenness, and I still, before we cut off and maybe do a second part, but I still let it run because it is so interesting what you're saying, and we are getting to a very, very nice, very pure point. So I'm praying out, I'm sending out, I'm willing to let go of my neediness of technical problems. I'm surrendering and relaxing to what is right now, hoping that it stays strong. Um, when you say I absolutely understand that. Now, this is, of course, really hard for somebody who is sick or somebody who has lost his or her job or is so passionate about a career that doesn't seem to work out the way he or she wanted it. And it takes a lot of, well, let's ask differently. Does it take sometimes a lot of experience um, until you're ready to let that all go, and really drop into the moment and say, I am okay with what is right now? That means to have an okayness and embrace with what is, and facing, as I would say, the terror of what I'm having is might never be different. And I find that from my own personal struggles extremely hard, because I was raised with the Esther Hicks and all that, and it was everything like raised from the American perspective. Everything is possible, so you just work hard enough, you do hard enough, you do all those meditations, you find your teachers, and you just go for it. And you're going to be healthy, you're going to be wealthy, you're going to live your passion. Everything is possible, and that led me on a path of a lot of suffering, a lot of suffering. It added on to the suffering that I felt already. So that was a layer on top of it, because I would not accept where I am. I would always say, no, no, you can do more, you have more, you can be healthy, you can be that, because Hollywood is showing that in the films. There's a better way. You rescue people, you are the hero, you become, Hollywood is really driving that machine of not accepting.
yeah.
And if you rescue other people, you die yourself, but you at least saved a few other people and then you died. So it's really hard to not get hooked by that. And I'm not talking about the whole music industry and how they, or the marketing industry, how they favor the body of a woman and what you need to look like. So this is another scene. I'm really looking at, okay, now maybe it's not about the body so much anymore. Now we understand that we don't have to be extra thin, extra beautiful to be extremely happy. TED Talk showing models who are saying, I am that, but I'm still, not as happy as you think I am. But then we are saying, okay, this is not the goal. So let's make it a goal to have a better life, to be more purposeful, to save the planet. So then let's make it a driver. So this is now the new fashion, working on purpose, having companies on purpose. But that's again a need. That's not dropping into a moment that maybe there is no purpose except the purpose to have an order in myself and to be peaceful in myself. And then you feel flat on your nose, think, what? That's now I'm facing that carrot. And now I'm again, facing myself, and that's all there is.
Very
And
good. Very good. That's it. And what I see is that spiritual awakening, or even happiness and freedom and truth and finding out who you are and whatever you want to call it, it has become another carrot for many people. And
yes,
that's just a trap of the mind. Really, the truth is that what you're looking for is already here. So if it's already here, it means you can stop looking. It means you can stop searching. It doesn't mean you make surrender into another objective that I can achieve in the future, because then it's just the same old, same old. There's a little me that is needy, that doesn't have what he wants, is unfulfilled, and needs to do something in order to get what I want. That's the pattern. That's what every ego feels like. And what I'm saying is that if you actually stop that whole wheel of suffering, stop that whole train, and just simply meet what's here, then there's nothing to do, nothing to get, nobody to be. There's no objective. Simply be yourself, be as you are. And it's so simple that a single movement of mind will take you away from it. And a single movement of mind will objectify it into an object that the little me, that the ego then owns. So now I'm awake, or I discovered myself, or I surrendered. And then that becomes just the next me that now inflates into thinking that it's in control and it's figured it out and it's got it. And so this is a tricky business. That the mind is brilliant and it's masterful and it's designed to help you survive. And and in the egoic state, it will do anything it can to keep you in the egoic state. And so it's really great what you say about turning awakening into another carrot. And I often actually use that analogy that I took, from my teacher, who took it from somewhere else. That everybody's playing this donkey game. That we're
yes,
chasing a carrot and we're running away from the stick.
yes.
And so I often say, just if you want to be a donkey, keep going, sure. But if you want to wake up, if you want to be free, then you just stop where you are. You forget about the carrot for a moment and you face the stick, and then you're free.
And that's, yeah, that's gosh, that's so simple. And I'm just having my hands in my hair, so it's a good symbol for like, oh yes, my hair is all over the place. So this would be a nice picture, actually, grasping what you are saying and saying, relax, relax, and also what you said before. I come back to hopefully come again with an example. So what I do, so when you also say, you make awakening another chasing the carrot, and we do observe that. And what I was struck by that in this whole spiritual process, where people choose different approaches to awaken or to find a different way of peace and calm and love, it's very fragmented. People are going even worse against each other. I mean, sometimes I'm saying my non-spiritual or my dancer friends who have no mindset for awakening or spiritual journey are sometimes the easier friends than my more awakened friends or my spiritual friends, because then we start really bombarding each other. I had this approach of the Enneagram, I had that approach of Eckhart Tolle, I had that, and people start to go against each other. That's what I saw. And like, wow, that's, aren't we talking about oneness? Aren't we talking about letting go of all that fragmentation and separation that's already caused by religion, by culture, by education, threatened by everything. And now we come into the spiritual world where we hope for oneness, and then it gets even more fragmented. It gets even more against each other. And I know the truth. And maybe my mind fuck, maybe it's my reality that's showing me how fragmented I am in my mind. But that's what I observed so far.
No, I see it too. It's that the ego is actually most threatened as it approaches the infinite, and so when the issue is only ego, it's not really society. It's not really um, It's not really religion. It's that ego that takes religion and turns it into identity. And so ego is available wherever you are and whatever you do. And so you might be on the spiritual path, but if you're thinking to yourself that I am on the spiritual path, then who is on the spiritual path? That thought itself is ego. And that means you haven't discovered the truth of yourself yet, or maybe you've had a taste, but the ego has taken it and is running with it now and inflating with it. So I see what you're talking about. I see it all the time, and I have compassion for your spiritual friends because if they really have met a true teaching or a true teacher, then it's possible they had a true insight and a true recognition of self, and that the ego has then felt threatened and come in and very secretly and surreptitiously taken possession of that experience and objectified it and turned it into another. Now it's an awakened ego. Now it's the it's
Yes.
a spiritual ego, and that's
I
very common.
I always say it's how do I say that? It's a piece of shit with whipped cream on top of it. So now it's still a piece of shit, but then now it has whipped cream on top of it.
Yeah.
I do catch myself when I see that I want to be right. So that's a moment when I step out and I think when I'm talking with somebody who goes into a different direction or has different approach to something that I have learned differently, and then it starts into, no, I think, and then I feel stop. Here you try to be right, step out, and I leave the situation for myself. And let's go dive into an example and talk about an example that I experienced just the last weeks. Not talking about myself, but maybe people can relate to it when I'm showing that, because I strongly believe we just walk each other home and we learn from each other and the stories, and then on the way, sometimes it doesn't feel as lonely, and then it feels like, this is also what happened with somebody else, and that makes a lot of sense. So what happened like the last weeks was, for some people there comes a wave of sadness suddenly out of the nowhere. It can happen, or a wave of depression, or a wave of anger. And for me, it was anger. And I find it better than sadness or depression, but anger is still going against myself. It feels really ugly, but I couldn't stop. I was so angry. I mean, I was doing pretty okay the weeks before, and suddenly all that anger comes, and what I had calmed down and being more in the moment and let myself be guided was just all gone. I said, "Oh, wait, holy go! I just don't get, where I was. I just Everything was back into the old motion." So my body reacted the same way with the familiar pains, and they were really strong. And I thought, I cannot believe it. All the work I've done, I was so far, and suddenly I feel myself back trapped in my mind trap. My ego is having me imprisoned in my own ego. And I do not feel a way out. I do not feel. And the cause was that I do have a passion for a certain kind of work, and it didn't work out the way, and I see myself working in a field that I don't like so much, but I seem to be successful there. And that's happening since 15 years. And then somebody would very compassionately say, with all the work you have done and all the talent you have, I cannot understand why this is not happening. And then, of course, the anger came and said, yes, and I'm shouting to God, and I'm not turning to anything that's happening in the world. I did so much. I wanted to create that and that. And I remembered your words. I remembered, this is not about it, and be happy. But I just couldn't get it together. The anger was the ego, and the anger was so much stronger. So then yesterday night, it's just tipped the was the tipping of the iceberg. And my partner bought a bottle of wine and said, have a glass of wine. So in that anger, I have a glass of wine, and it relaxed a little bit. And then I started to laugh a little bit more. But in the evening, I was so exhausted. I was so exhausted from those weeks of fighting it, of trying, that in that surrendering of exhaustion, I did feel peace. Now, that's feeling like I'm at zero. And I do know that zero is a door. But I thought, weeks of struggle, weeks of fighting, weeks of trying to get back, weeks of trying to be in the moment. I mean, there was absolutely no way I was able to feel peace or just breathe or just, it just was layered of anger and anger and anger. And I wonder if this sometimes needs to happen, that you go through those phases, that it's part of the process. So I would put myself even in more anger, because I said, well, now you listen to Jared, listen to the interview again. And now read that, read Eckhart, you do all the, do the singing bowls. No, singing bowls. Do the piano music. And then no, that doesn't work. Go in nature.
So Janine, this is all you're talking about, strategies to make the anger go away, because there's a belief or a feeling that the anger is not spiritual or not good.
Yes.
And actually, what I'm speaking about is opening to the anger. Is actually allowing the anger to be here fully. Because if you surrender and there's anger, then there's anger. But if you surrender,
Mm.
then there's no story. So you don't personalize it. You don't talk about why, I'm angry because of this. And it could be coming from this anger about not getting what you want, which is really what you're saying. This frustration and anger that no matter how hard you try, you can't work in the field that you love. And so I'm saying, yes, open to that anger and feel it fully, and surrender to the anger without telling a story about it and without doing anything. So you don't have to punch the pillow, you don't have to scream, you don't have to cathart. You just open to the anger internally. And this is a different flavor to the peace that we often associate with awakening. This is about actually that you might discover if you open to anger without a story. You might discover life force energy. You might discover power. And that power and life force energy are not the enemy. In fact, they might even help you to pursue your chosen field. And so this is where it's actually quite seemingly paradoxical that
Mm.
we treat anger as being the enemy, and anger means that I'm bad, and anger is dangerous, and I don't want to hurt anybody, and it means that I'm not enlightened, I'm not awake, and all of that results in us judging ourselves and resisting and suppressing and trying to figure out how to escape from the feeling that I'm having, and then using spirituality to escape. But actually, this true spirituality is not about escaping the anger. It's actually opening to it, because that anger is actually your life force energy. It's Shakti, it's power.
Well, I did. That's very good that you say that. I always saw anger as that. And just the story that I have heard somewhere, what it does to your body, I felt like, oh, shit, this is what it's doing to my body. This is what it's in. Don't feel angry. Um, and some people, there are some things online going to take a bubble bath. So take and be nice to yourself. And, these are very young people in social media. And I think, okay, this is how far we got. Take a bubble bath. Um, and yeah, that arises sometimes some anger in me, and I think, what kind of bullshit is that? But of course, we all do our steps and we all are learning. And I think, don't make that a story, Janine. What you're saying is, and what I'm hearing you're saying is, if you have anger, any kind of what we call negative emotion or sadness or depression,
Mhm.
to allow it, to face it, and to let it happen. That it's not, bringing you in deep shit or in deep nothingness, but beyond that anger or facing that, something is pulsating and it will come forward. Is that true?
Yes, it actually, if you feel despair about the world or depressed about the world, that is an intelligent response to a world filled with madness, filled with
Yeah.
suffering. Everywhere I look, there's suffering and ignorance and avoidance. And so I had depression and I had anxiety, and those were actually both legitimate responses to a mad world. And but we're taught to medicate it. We're taught to avoid it, to try to change it. And again, not seeing that this is actually the structure of the ego, which is the ego says whatever's here is wrong. Whatever here is bad. We need something else. It needs to change. It's basically anything but acceptance, anything but surrender. And
Mm.
so
Mhm,
to
mhm,
really surrender is it means whatever emotion is here, deep sadness, despair, terror, rage, open to it. And in opening to it, you actually, it's deeper than the mind. If you're thinking about it, if you're telling a story, whose fault it is or why it's happening to me, you're not actually directly meeting it because you're actually in your head thinking about it. So there's a disassociation that happens if you go into your
mhm,
head. And so I'm suggesting the possibility to meet your emotions directly simply by opening to them and not having a preconceived idea that they're negative. Okay, yes, it's uncomfortable, no doubt about it. And yes, we've been taught that it's bad and that fear does feel scary. I do get that. But it's possible that if you don't move and if you just open to terror, you might discover that it's energy, that it's waves of energy, that you can't even distinguish it from excitement. And you might find if you open to self-loathing or worthlessness, if you open deep enough, it like opens a kind of doorway to your heart, and you start to feel love because all sadness and pain comes from love. We're not sad about things we don't love. We're only sad about what we love. And with rage, it's really our own life force power. That if you open to rage, you discover this kind of this integrity, actually, this power and integrity that still says yes. It's still supple like the ocean, but the ocean, as supple as it has an enormous amount of power. You don't mess with the ocean. And so, like
no.
that, so humans are like that too. We have a power.
There's a funny little, maybe that relates to it, a funny little story. I love the sentence, love is not pretty, because, when we are on a spiritual journey, we think about kindness and softness all the time. And if we miss it, we feel bad or guilty that we are not that kind and compassionate and squishy mushy. And sorry for saying that.
Yes.
And it's, the, when I heard love is not pretty, I could step up to bravery, or I could step up to honesty and authenticity. And that could be loaded with something. And I wouldn't make it nice. I wouldn't glamour it. I would just own it at that moment. And I was struck because it happened a couple of times. And maybe this is a bit relating to what you're saying. So I meet, we have here a bicycle path, and since it's not, you're not allowed actually to go by car, only if you live there. The bikers are driving there, and they can be extremely aggressive and title, "This is my path, so don't go there." And in such an aggression, so normally you would be compassionate and say, let go of it. So sometimes if such a biker is facing or coming and, really, and you feel already the vibration of anger and, that I would sometimes not try to make peace. I would snap, or I would do something and be very angry or do something. And I could see that not just with the bikers, but with other situations, that it was like electricity. It was like a little thunderstorm, and then it was begone. And then it felt like the person in front of me would just drop back in, ease, and I would drop back in ease. And after that, we would be very kind to each other. And it was just very strange. It was not, I didn't think about how do I react. I would say something and would be like, can you just behave? Or can you just think that again? And sometimes, of course, it wouldn't always work. But in that minute of telling my truth and not saying anything, we would both drop back to ease and be extremely soft and easy with each other. Sometimes they would be my favorite neighbors, and because I didn't try to make it pretty.
Yes,
Is this also what you're saying when you say, anger is energy, and sadness, it's electricity, it's energy, it's part of love. It's not against love.
absolutely. That's exactly it. That I see love as integrity. And that's something, my teacher really with me, and I see it with other people, he has so much integrity that he's willing to say the truth, even if there's a risk someone might take offense to it. He's willing to give you feedback even if it could potentially cause you to feel bad about yourself. And because he knows it so well that it comes from love, it really comes out of his heart, that he's being honest and truthful, that you can feel it. And so it does have that effect
Mm.
for the most part. And I know in my work with people that it's just growing. It's like the degree of how direct I am with people now, compared to 2 or 3 years ago, even, it's a huge difference. And so to me, and people really love and appreciate my directness
Yes.
because they want to hear the
Yes.
truth. They don't want to hear some kind of, like you said, something dressed up, something pretty. They don't want the lipstick on the pig. They want the direct truth, no matter how ugly it is. And there's something very loving about being willing to have the integrity to tell the truth.
Yeah, I can see that. I can. I watched the interview, and I said, and also, we had it last time, and you said I'm not very entertaining to the minds, and I said to you, yes, you are not. That's true. But of course, at the same time, I really loved it because it's not playing the charming. Um, Trying to make it nice personality, who was interviewed. You still have that a lot. And I can feel this meanwhile. I can really feel that. And you own what you're saying right now, right here. And I think this is what I do in the field of my work, where I do not want to be so much. And sometimes I think, why am I very successful there? Because I don't need to prove. I don't want anything. I don't need anything. I'm pretty courageous because I don't care so much. And still, I do have a heart. But this did not, it's very strange. They always ask me, and I am very strong because everything I care so much about is just not happening there. And
This is a good
I'm
signal,
just,
right? This is a
okay,
good teaching. This is a really good teaching. So because you don't have attachment, because it's not really your chosen field, so you don't have the same attachment.
no.
It means you're fulfilled. It means you're not needy around the work, and that means you're not afraid to make a mistake. And so then you're direct and you're forward and you're confident and you do really well at it. And then if you look at the field that you do want to do work in, I can imagine that it's different. That actually, because you want it, now there's fear of making a mistake, wanting to do it well, wanting to do it right, and all of that kind of neediness and fear. Uh, it actually then stops you from being free. It stops you from really being yourself. And
Yes, that's so true.
performing. Yeah, so that's a great little a little case study for yourself to really compare. How do I feel when I go to this work where I don't necessarily love it, and how do I feel internally when I go to this other work, and see what's required. What if you could surrender the
If
outcome?
you would know that I do this since 10 years now, or 15 years. So talking about time and patience, but I do love the case study. I do love to see it that way. It makes it much lighter. And I'm extremely, well, I do not love the work, I have to say, but I do love the way how I am in the work. I'm extremely entertaining and funny, particularly when it comes to the directors, where everybody is very afraid. And I do stuff that you normally would never do. You don't touch somebody on his lap, with the top of the board of directors, but I always touch them. And then when they sometimes come in the studio, I would turn around the monitor and say, "That's shit. That's absolutely shit." But I do laugh. I do have a big heart for that. And they do say to me, "Is that really so?" I say, "Yes, absolutely. Yes, we cannot take that." And then I had colleagues watching me, and they say, "I cannot believe that they go in the end of the session to you, shake your hand, and say, 'That was great. When can we start again?'" And I think sometimes I wasn't really particularly nice. I just found myself extremely entertaining. Otherwise, I wouldn't deal with it. But I do have a heart, and I never come with meanness or with that comes very natural that I always do have a heart. And I find this a very interesting way now that you say also that's a case study. I would so to love to apply it to the field that I really am passionate about. But there is something to this. And let me be brave, a brave heart again. I mean, all good things are three, and because we did have technical minor problems, thank you for your patience again, listeners, dear listeners. What do you think about taking that case study into, taking a case study, not that one, but a case study in a third round and meet again? Would you be open for that, or do you lose patience?
Not at all. I feel infinite patience, but particularly for this work. I mean, I love it, and yes, the answer is yes.
Yes?
Yes, absolutely.
Super.
Yeah,
Super. I was not afraid that you gave me a no. I wouldn't have known what to say then. I said, okay. But I'm very happy that you did say yes. Super. So let's meet again and take that as a case study and go into, I think many people experience that. And many people do have something that comes natural to them and that's easy. And then they do fight for something, because they love it so much and then it doesn't come and they think they haven't done enough or they feel guilty. And I think that is a very wonderful way. I've been struggling with this one since 10 or 15 years,
yes.
clinching my teeth. But, and it's also to complete this. When I was so frustrated, yesterday I went to my doctor who did a massage. Actually, he said, he gave me an oil and he said to me, this reminds you of your hometown. And I said, tulips. Tulip oil. And he said, no, not tulip oil. It was, the smell of, have a good joint. And he had it of marijuana. And I said, marijuana oil? So he said, yes. So I had to, so innocent that I said tulip oil because I come from Amsterdam
Mhm.
and I never smoked a joint in my life. So he gave me marijuana oil, massaging me. And I talked with him before and talked about, how frustrated I was. And he said, I see that you're very unhappy. And I said, no, I'm not unhappy. I'm absolutely not unhappy. That's like, there is happiness beyond that. I can feel that. I think my soul is extremely happy. My soul thinks my life is a big success. And I had to laugh my head off while I'm sitting in front of him because he looked startled. And I said, no, I really do believe that it feels as my soul, it's a huge success. Just my ego thinks I'm not very successful, and I wanted to explore that further. So I don't know what you can complete in this, but it felt good. It didn't feel awkward, although I felt the frustration at the same time also.
That's beautiful. So you're very clear. Okay, so in your soul, in your heart, you feel like a success. You feel happy, and only in your ego do you feel suffering. And so then, what I would say is which one are you going to give your life to? Which one do you give your attention to? For me, I would say it would be nothing short of crazy to give a single second of the rest of your life to your ego, since it's causing you suffering and it's not even true. Since
Mhm.
your soul is telling you you're happy and it's happy in your soul, then I would say give yourself entirely to that. And so then on
That's a
you know
no. Please continue. Please continue.
on the way down there might be fear, you might have to give up your mind, you might have to give up the future, whatever it is for you. But it's worth it if that's what it means, that your ego is causing suffering and your soul is happy. Then dive into your soul all the way and don't look back.
Wow, that's a beautiful ending. So our next part is going to be, and now we dive, or I dive into my soul. I mean, I'm progressing, am I? This part was about now I jump off the cliff
Yes.
into nothingness, and now in that nothingness, I dive into my soul. I love it. Thank you so much, Jared.
Oh, thank
That was Jared Franks for NGW Radio Hour, and it was a beautiful interview again. I'm so much looking forward to the next part. So have a wonderful, beautiful day wherever you are, dear listeners. Thank you, and until soon again.